Hey guys, Abby here, and today's video is all about my Mayhem 4 viable Gamma Burst build. I've spent so much time trying different combinations to get this build just right, and I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. Plus, I'm going to show you a weapon that can actually increase your pet's damage, making the spider ant a great companion in Mayhem 4. Gamma Burst Fl4k is in a difficult place in Mayhem 4 due to the long skill duration and cooldown. It limits our options for anointed items as we don't get much out of action skill and anointments. So until new anointments are added to the game, Rakk Attack and Fadeaway are better builds for pure damage. You can check out my Cryo Rakk Attack build and the base Rakk Attack build here on the channel if you're interested in that. I'm hoping in the future we're going to see a buff to Gamma Burst anointments and some type of during action skill type anointments, but luckily the skill tree for this build is very similar to Rakk Attack, so you can switch it up whenever you want. Alright, that being said, let's get into the build. First, here's the skill tree if you want to pause the screen and take a look. We'll be using the Spider Ant for elemental damage and health regen, with Empathic Rage as our first skill augment. For the second skill augment, you can choose Atomic Aura or Burst Aid depending on your preference. Personally, I hate that the Burst Aid orb for the health regen is not transparent, and so it makes it very difficult depending on where you put your Gamma Burst during the fight. So I choose to go with Atomic Aura. A couple other notes about the skill tree: Psycho Head on a Stick is not required, and neither is Grim Harvest. Feel free to move those points around to fit your playstyle. I prefer having a little bit more pet damage and movement speed for my pet to get around the battlefield. Also, if you're using a lot of multi-pellet weapons like the Maggie and the Brainstormer, move the points out of Two Fang as well. I went into more detail about this interaction with Two Fang in my Cryo update video if you're interested in that. We'll also be using the Red Fang class mod for this build, so you want to make sure you either have 1 point into He Bites on your class mod, or you'll need to spec into it here. If you have it on your class mod, it's not required to spec into it, so you can put that point somewhere else. The Gamma Burst action skill creates a rift at the target location, teleporting your pet through the rift and deals radiation damage to nearby enemies. You can also revive your pet with Gamma Burst, but this doubles your action skill cooldown time. The overall strategy and playstyle of this build is to limit your Gamma Burst duration to the minimum 20 seconds and increase your cooldown rate through the skill head count or your class mods and artifacts. This allows you to still get some use out of the action skill anointments like elemental damage on your shield and grenade. We'll also be using the Red Fang class mod, so our pet will be taunting all nearby enemies during Gamma Burst. For bossing, you're going to want to use the Bounty Hunter class mod because this will give you your hunter skills randomly when you do gun damage instead of having to rely on kills. Your pet is not going to die while it's in Gamma Burst, but depending on the Mayhem modifiers, she'll probably die right after Gamma Burst is over, which turns all the enemy attention to you. There are ways to stack health regen and keep your pet alive during this downtime, but personally I didn't like the DPS loss required for that, so we're just going to have to deal with our pet dying after Gamma Burst is over. This is mostly going to happen in areas like Slaughter Shaft, where the enemies are doing lots and lots of damage. Depending on the modifiers, if you get extra projectiles, that's a doozy, or weapon damage. You may notice your pet going down more often in those areas than others. For regular things like going through the DLC or the story, your pet probably won't go down as much. So make sure you're prepared near cover and ready to get as many critical hits as possible once Gamma Burst is over, so that you can proc head count for action skill cooldown reduction. Weapons that chain to other enemies like the Brainstormer or Redistributor are perfect to get your cooldown back quickly. To help Fl4k sustain during Gamma Burst downtime, we're also using the Frozen Heart Shield. This shield is a dedicated drop from Aurelia, and it's not a world drop. It can come anointed, but it doesn't come with any additional perks like brimming or turtle or anything like that. When the shield is depleted, it releases a large Cryo Nova, dealing over 11k damage, and it freezes the enemies immediately. 30% of that Nova damage is returned as health, so this is a great way to sustain while you're waiting for your Gamma Burst to come back. If you don't have the Frozen Heart Shield, another great option is the Stopgap Shield to get immunity when your shield breaks. The Frozen Heart Shield also pairs really nicely with the Icebreaker artifact that we're going to be using. I went with the Icebreaker Auto Idol to give us health back on kill. This is another way to keep that sustain up for Fl4k. But with the Icebreaker artifact, when you freeze all these enemies with the Cryo Nova of the Frozen Heart Shield, now you're going to be doing additional 35%. To pair nicely with the Icebreaker artifact, we'll also be using a cryo grenade with the anointment on action skill and gain 50% bonus cryo with weapons for 10 seconds. You can switch up the elemental anointments based on the types of enemies you're fighting. So if you're going to be fighting a lot of armor bars, you may want to have a corrosive and a cryo, or a lot of shield, you may want to put shock on there. So just switch it up depending on what you're doing. The grenade also doesn't have to be a hex grenade. There are plenty of purple rarity grenades you can find in the vending machines and all over Borderlands that will get the job done, especially if you find a cryo one with chiller and an elemental damage perk. Those can be really great for freezing enemies as well. For weapons, you're going to look for a redistributor or brainstormer, like I said, to proc head count. Also, I like to always bring a fire weapon when I know they're going to be anointed enemies around. The Kibsworth is also a great option, preferably one with shock and cryo, so that you can switch to shock if you have shields or you're fighting a boss with a shield or something. Other than that, the weapon options are up to you. Obviously, you want to make sure you have a couple cryo weapons in your arsenal so that you can take advantage of that Icebreaker artifact, preferably ones with high cryo efficiency. The final weapon I want to talk about is the Zaitsev's Eruption. I think I'm saying that right. This assault rifle drops from Titan, who's the final boss of the Slaughter Shaft, and also from the Malawan Takedown, but you have to be on Mayhem 4 to get this drop. It's not required for the build, but the special feature will help Gamma Fl4k pump out more damage. The COV gun, when overheated, launches 8 homing projectiles that debuff the enemy for 20% each projectile, and they last for 7 seconds. Plus, multiple projectiles can stack on one enemy. You'll notice that they are debuffed when you see a red glow around the enemy, and the cool part is I noticed that my pet does more damage to these enemies, which is super awesome because honestly, Fl4k's pet needs more of a damage buff. I know they already gave him damage buffs to some of the skills, but the pet just needs it. Your spider ant isn't going to miraculously turn into a DPS god with this gun, but it's definitely a noticeable buff, and it buffs all their fire damage as well, which is a nice supplement to the radiation and cryo damage that we'll be doing. Another tip to get more projectiles out of the eruption is to cancel the overheat animation with a melee. This will launch a second set of projectiles that stack onto the first set. This is helpful against tankier enemies like bosses or even anointed enemies. I've taken them out this way with the eruption. The only downside to this weapon is that you may run out of ammo fairly quickly because you want to use it so much to debuff the enemy, but it's really great to use against those bigger, harder enemies. Alright guys, that is it for Gamma Burst Fl4k. I hope you guys enjoyed this build guide. If you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Let me know what you want to see next here on the channel. If you enjoy Borderlands 3 content and you want to see more, hit that subscribe button, ring the bell for notifications. I also stream on twitch.tv/AbbyHour Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Trust me, you don't want to miss out on this weirdness. For now, I'll leave you with some more gameplay, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.
I will prove myself!